I have lived in Bangalore most of my life. I'm as Bangalorean as it gets. And I'd like to first ask you, sir, how would you like for me to address you? Should I say, Sir, Narayan Murthy, sir? I'll say Murthy, sir. So, what do you think at the very beginning, because we are sitting here speaking in Bangalore, what do you think makes Bangalore the city? You've seen it for a long time now, and if you had to define Bangalore in your way over the last 40, 50 years, how would you put Bangalore in say, 3 or 4 sentences?
Well, the most enduring memory that I have of Bangalore is that people are very hospitable, they are very accommodating. Being a Kannadiga, I have been coming to this city since 1959. So I do know this city reasonably well. They are very, very hospitable, very accommodating, very adjusting, very welcoming, and very kind people. So there is absolutely no doubt about it. And they welcome people from all other states and from other countries wholeheartedly. Second, thanks to the extraordinary vision of the Diwans and the Maharaja of Mysore and others, this state has had an excellent educational foundation. Whether it was the Indian Institute of Science, founded with the munificence of the Maharaja of Mysore and J.R.D. and Jamshedji Tata, or whether the number of engineering colleges founded by several altruistic, educated, retired engineers. Karnataka has always had a reputation for, whether you went to Madhya Pradesh, whether you went to Maharashtra, whether you went to Andhra Pradesh or Uttar Pradesh, you would always see a larger percentage of engineers from Mysore, as it was called then, now of course Karnataka, than other states. And of course, Bangalore has had the advantage of very salubrious climate. Therefore, a lot of people from other states want to come and settle down here. And Bangalore has also had some very famous institutions, like whether it's Vidyarthi Bhavan, whether it's MTR, etc., etc. I think these are the vignettes that come to my mind when I think of Bangalore.
So, if I were to talk about economies overall, it will be interesting to hear what your thoughts are about socialism, capitalism, what works, or which part of what works, and how you've seen the world around you change over your illustrious 50-plus year career, and what do you think are the nuances required in today's form of capitalism to continue to work?
I had the fortune of working in France in early 70s, and as a student I was a strong leftist because my father was a high school teacher. We were 8 children and he was a great admirer of Jawaharlal Nehru. And every day, of course, as you know, Nehru believed in socialism. And every day we were fed a very staple diet of socialism. So we'd all become strong socialist, leftist, not communist, but strong leftist. But when I went to France, my whole edifice of socialism and leftism crumbled because I saw clean roads, I saw prosperity, I saw most advanced trains running on time, I saw prosperity everywhere, lots of food, well-clothed people, healthy people, and all of that. Therefore, I was transformed from a confused leftist to a determined, compassionate capitalist. Now, what do I mean by a determined, compassionate capitalist? I believe that capitalism based on the twin pillars of free market and entrepreneurship is the only solutions to any country to solve its problem of poverty. There is no other ism. Let me assure you, there is no other ism. I have studied reasonably deeply. So anybody who says other way may not be telling the whole truth. So what you need is free markets where government doesn't interfere, and second, entrepreneurship where government goes out of its way to encourage the entrepreneurs to run their enterprises legally and ethically, so government becomes a fair and transparent regulator. Now that's on the government side. On the other hand, on the side of the entrepreneurs, they have to realize that they are the evangelists for capitalism, because by and large capitalism is still new in India. It's not yet been fully accepted, particularly in politics. So therefore, I'm not an entrepreneur today, but at least the entrepreneurs of today have to realize that it's not just sufficient for them to seek free market and encouragement for entrepreneurship, but they have to bring fairness, transparency and accountability to running their enterprises. They have to ensure that when they take their decisions, they have to look at whether the poorest or the lowest level employee in the company is made better by the decisions they take. They have to pay their taxes honestly. They have to contribute a certain percentage of their profits to the betterment of the society. So in other words, not only should they seek to grow their revenues and their profits, which is very legitimate, but at the same time, they have to become an integral part of the society to lift the society to a higher level. That's what I term compassionate capitalism. So I think that is my view. compassionate capitalism is the only solution for a poor country like India to become a prosperous country. Not socialism, not communism, none of those.
So, classical economic theory, if you were to say what Adam Smith started off economics of the modern world, he believed that every individual doing what is best for them and being selfish, the opposite of altruism, is net positive for the ecosystem at large. So, when you're talking about benevolence in capitalism, are you saying that the anomalies of capitalism or people who have done exceedingly well, they need to be benevolent in particular, or are you talking about society at large?
No, I think you're right. What Adam Smith said was, the fact that you have bacon on your table is not because of the benevolence of the butcher. It is because of his own self-interest. However, while self-interest will drive every one of us to do what is best for ourselves, there are rules and regulations laid down by the government which ensures that I do not tread on your feet. I do not compromise the interest of the society. I pay my taxes properly. I follow every rule of the land. The moment I follow every rule of the land, the moment I am a good citizen, then I am absolutely free to maximize my profit. So that is the kind of equilibrium, economic equilibrium that you and I would want.
Do you have an opinion in particular about taxation, Murthy sir? I think many governments and we have precedent in the Western economies where someone like Richard Nixon maybe tweaked the tax rates multiple times. He realized that 20% is probably the kind of number where most likely will there be honest taxation where people are willing to pay that 20% and the incentive to circumvent that goes down. Do you think in the capitalistic society of today, India included, there is an appropriate level of taxation?
Well, we have to realize that India is a poor country. A per capita GDP of $2,300 puts us about twice the per capita GDP of what is called low-income countries by the United Nations and other bodies. We are still far away from being called a middle-income country, where the per capita GDP is somewhere between 6,000 to about 12 to 15,000. You know it very well. Now, in a country like India, where there's a large mass of poor people, I think we, the evangelists of capitalism, must accept that we have to pay a higher level of taxation because there are so many public services that our government will have to provide for the poor people. You know, the other day the Prime Minister said that his government will provide free ration to 800 million people for the next 5 years. So what that really means is we have at least 800 million people who do not have the capacity to earn 2 meals a day. Now, it's partly their problem, but partly the problem of the society. You know, poor fellows, they would have tried hard, but they may not have been able to get jobs. So, in order to create efficient, corruption-free, and effective public goods in our country, the taxation will have to be obviously higher than what you see in developed countries. So I personally would not at all grudge if I have to pay a higher level of taxation. I'm quite happy because it's only, Priyank is here, it's only people like him who will have to say, how can we provide the best services for the poor people? However, when you provide those services, when you provide those subsidies, there must be something in return that they are willing to do. For example, if you say, I will give you free electricity, then it would have been a very nice thing for the government to have said, but we want to see the percentage attendance in schools, in the primary schools and middle schools, to go up by 20%. Then only we will give you that. In other words, nothing should be given free, but there should be a contribution of the citizen also towards making our society a better society. So I think it's so therefore, while I am not against free services being provided, I fully understand. I also came from a poor background once upon a time. But I think we should expect something in return from those people who receive those free subsidies to take a slightly bigger responsibility towards making their future generation, their own future generation, their own children, their own grandchildren, better in terms of going to school, performing better, etc., etc. That's what I mean.
Just extrapolating on that same thought a bit further, if, like you said, let's say that GDP per capita number where things start to change drastically, in today's ecosystem, let's assume it's $5,000 per person. If you had to give three suggestions, three very definitive suggestions that could easily be implemented by the government that you think will go a long way towards helping this outcome, what would they be?
To enhance the GDP?
Take it to GDP of $5,000 per capita.
Yeah, well, we have a neighbor in the north, China. China has reached a GDP of $19 plus trillion. We are at 3.1 or 3.2, 3.4, I don't know, whatever, maybe 4. Some people are saying 4, I don't know, whatever it is. In other words, a neighbor of ours up in the north, which had all the same problems as us, which, has reached a GDP 5 times India's or 6 times India's. So all that I would humbly request our political leaders is to study China very, very carefully and then say what are the good things that we can learn from China and implement it here so that India too becomes, India too advances at the same pace as China, and India too becomes become a nation that has reduced the poverty of its people.
One answer to that could be China of the 80s and 90s and 2000s, early 2000s, was really open in nature. You yourself have worked in an industry which is outsourcing services for a long time now. Uh, India is still not truly both capital account and current account convertible, which makes it hard for businesses like this to truly thrive. Do you think we are at risk for over-regulation? Do you think over-regulation is curtailing the animal spirits of entrepreneurs in India today?
No, there is a difference between China and India. We were a colonized country for 1,000 plus years, starting with whatever Alauddin Khilji or whoever came around 980, whatever it is, to 1947. Our destiny was under the control of foreigners who did not identify themselves with our country. So it is very difficult for us to compare with China, which did not go through this kind of stuff. And second thing is that we have a different model of governance. Okay? We are a democracy, at least in voting, and therefore it's not that easy. It's not that easy for the government to push through what it believes is the best best methods of increasing the prosperity. So this is a very complex issue, but what we need to do is, in some way, all the political parties come together, and each political party contribute a couple of intellectuals from their party, and they form a committee, and then they all sit together and then invites a few successful, well-experienced academicians and corporate leaders and all, and then say, what are the practical solutions that we can come out with so that we move up to 1 in 5 in attracting foreign direct investment, not foreign portfolio investment. Foreign portfolio investment comes today and it goes tomorrow at a profit. On the other hand, foreign direct investment is where people come here to stay long. They put in a lot of money in building infrastructure. They make the companies stronger. So I think if we can come out with a report wherein we can say, these are the 100 things that have made various other nations a fast progressing and prosperous country. Therefore, let's try and see if we can implement it. Now, it is very, very important whether it is a BJP government or a Congress government or some Trinamool Congress, I don't know, whatever they are. They all have to say, our country comes first and then our party. And in order to do that, we may have to make certain minor adjustments in the aspirations of our own party. I think that is the kind of India I am looking for. I am 78. I don't know how many years I will live. But if I can see such a coming together of the wonderful political leaders that we have in this country, sit together, argue based on data and facts, and agree what is a reasonable suggestion, what is a worthwhile suggestion, and then say, whether I am in party A or party B, party C, this is our Bhagavad Gita of business progress, and we will all follow, and nobody will raise objection. I think that is the kind of India that I am dreaming of.
If I were to move on to education, a lot of companies in the West, Facebook, Meta now, X, a lot of them are not insisting upon traditional college degrees, to the extent that there might be some companies claiming that you don't need to mention where you graduated from on your job application to these companies. We spoke about income inequality earlier. If one were to assume that the biggest barrier or the biggest solution to the problem of income inequality is education, what do you think is broken with the education system in India broadly? And do you feel a use case can be made for the education system or the process of education in itself to become more fragmented in nature? I mean, where you don't go to one particular college to get all your educational needs, but you get it from 5 or 10 different places, and you go to experts at different things for different things.
Well, first of all, I must congratulate Sri Modi's government on forming NEP, the National Education Policy. It's a step in the right direction. And given that Dr. Kasturarangan was the chairman of that, given that people like Manjul Bhargava are part of that, I have tremendous hope that it will show us a path towards becoming better. The need of the day is to seed in the minds of our children, the primary and the secondary school children, independent thinking, active listening, critical thinking, Socratic questioning, relating what is learned in the classroom to the problems around us, and thinking of solutions to our problems. The moment our education gets transformed to this model, my belief is that then your college degree, they start mattering less. But even there, you would need for certain kinds of stuff. You do need college degrees, you need undergraduate and postgraduate degrees, you need PhDs, they are all required. But it would not be as important as we see here. For example, I have a friend of mine who is a professor at a top class, who is a very famous orthopedician in the US, and his undergraduate degree was in history. Why was it that a fellow with an undergraduate degree in history could get admission to the MD program there? The reason is that system of education encouraged all the things that I talked about. So I am very positive that the NEP, with Dr. Kasturarangan and Manjul Bhargava and other well-meaning people and competent people, extraordinary people, will show a path towards making our children, much more competent in this kind of education. And then the demand for, these degrees will reduce.
If your son Rohan, if he grew up in a box, ignoring the mimetic nature of life and picking up influences from the people around him, and he were to be, say, 16 or 17 today, picking what to study, what would you suggest to Rohan?
If I were to be 17, what would I?
If your son, if your son Rohan was to be not influenced by society at large, and he will pick to study exactly what you tell him to, and he's 17 years old today, let's assume, what would you recommend he study? What college, what subject, what degree?
No, I think thanks to my wife, not to me, because I hardly spent any time with my children. I was very busy in Infosys. Thanks to my wife, who is of course a better engineer than I was, she brought up our children with all the wonderful qualities that I talked about. Curiosity, analytical thinking, relating formal education to understand reality around us, etc. And they both went abroad to the US for undergraduate education. Of course, my son did his PhD later, daughter did her MBA. So in some way, I would say that I have been very lucky because I have had a partner who took up that responsibility of bringing up two wonderful children. I don't think I would have asked for anything more.
For companies like Infosys, which are exporting services to the Western world, amongst many other things that Infosys is doing, how big of a threat do you think language models, artificial intelligence? I've spent the last couple of days trying to get my head around Q-Star AI's new Chat AI's new product, ChatGPT's new thing. I'm still trying to figure out how it actually works, but on the face of it, for somebody who is not an expert at this, it could systemically affect how companies like Infosys work. How do you think they will transition into the world of tomorrow?
Well, the reality is that human mind is the most flexible and the most powerful instrument that ever existed. We have seen, starting from the invention of the wheel to ChatGPT 4 today, it has been a journey of asking questions as to how can we use technology to make our lives better? How can we use technology for us to become more productive? How can we reduce the cost of the technology? How can we make this technology become all-pervasive? How can we use technology to enhance transparency, efficiency, etc., etc.? That has been going on. And all of that has happened due to either invention that happens once in a while or to innovation that happens on a continuous basis. So the only insurance that any company, doesn't matter whether it's Infosys or Hindustan Unilever or any company that you, in any field that you can think of, the only insurance that it has for its survival, growth and success is the ability to create a mindset in the organization that constantly innovates and that constantly says, how can we improve our productivity? How can we improve the quality? How can we reduce the cost of what we do? What are the new methods by which we can in fact make the life of our citizens even better. As long as the CEOs of companies encourage such thinking amongst the employees of the company, then you don't have to worry about ChatGPT, LLM, it doesn't matter. Machine learning, deep learning, whatever may come and go, they will all be able to leverage those technologies for the betterment of the companies, the individuals, and the country. That's what
I was watching an interview by you. You spoke about your time in France, your time backpacking through Eastern Europe. The Narayan Murthy that we see today, how did that transition on a very individualistic level happen from you hitchhiking in Eastern Europe to you, Murthy sir, sitting here today? And can you talk about some of the big learnings that you have had through that journey? Doesn't have to be very professional in nature, but just as an individual, as a person.
Well, I was very fortunate that I was brought up in a house, in a home, where the father, he was in a petty job, what you would call, and mother was busy in the kitchen from 6 a.m. to probably 8 p.m. because those days she had to use wood to burn the stove, right, to use the stove. We didn't have any coal, we didn't have all these gas stoves, nothing. So the result was both the parents were busy with their own chores, and the only time when we all sat together was at dinner. Father would talk about all the wonderful things that were happening during Nehru's, during that time, thanks to Jawaharlal Nehru. And he would tell us time and again, friend, the only escape you have from poverty is a little bit of smartness, lot of hard work, and an enduring value system. He said those are the only three things that will take you from where you are today to betterment. So we were brought up with tremendous independence in our mind. So therefore, whether my hitchhiking happened simply because when I left France, I said, look, I want to actually collect more data on my belief of compassionate capitalism. And I said, I want to go and I spent about 11 months on the road in not just Western, highly developed nations in Western Europe, but I also want to go and spend time in Eastern Europe, which was primarily under the communist regime those days, in Russia, in Israel, in Iraq, in Iran, in Afghanistan, etc. Because I was trying to obtain more and more data for my belief that compassionate capitalism is the only method for India to remove its poverty, and free market and entrepreneurship are the only tools that compassionate capitalists have. And that is how I spent my time going through so many of those countries, and I got confirmed by the time I reached Afghanistan. I was certain that that's the only thing that will work, and I'm very glad that I have been proved right. All other models of development have failed. You know, you have seen Soviet Union, you have seen other countries. And the only thing that will succeed are, as I said, free market and entrepreneurship, unbridled but fairly regulated entrepreneurship. And I think that is the only hope for India.
If I may take the liberty, I'd love to ask you something a little personal, just to get to know you a bit more. Who were you hitchhiking with, and are you in touch with those people?
Well, you know, when you hitchhike, you're not certain who will be with you for a day or two or three. What you do is, those days, now of course you can't hitchhike, thanks to all the terrorism, thanks to all the evil people, all of that. Those days, you could go and stand at a gas station, which is a petrol pump in India, and there will be cars coming and going in different directions, and you have to say, okay, this is the direction I want to go, and would it be possible for you to give me a lift? You are not certain how many miles he or she will take you, etc., etc. And therefore, you may come across one or two other people waiting with you to go in the same direction. And if the driver happens to have enough space in his or her car for maybe 2 or 3 people, then you would be lucky to strike friendship with them. And sometimes you may all get on at the same town and, you know, then spend some time together, or they may move on or you may move on. So there is no permanent companion when you are hitchhiking. At least in my case.
You embody simple living, high thinking. My favorite philosopher is this person by the name of Jiddu Krishnamurthy. He talks a lot about what it means to have a personality that faces the world, but shadow personalities inside of your own brain. I have so many insecurities that I think I wear loosely on my sleeve. If you were to talk about your insecurities as a man of your stature, something that we can learn from, something that from your evolution and your path, you know, it would feed someone young like me and give me some kind of direction in life. What do you think are your insecurities behind the stature of the man that we see on the outside?
Well, you know, I was very lucky that I had parents who believed in enduring values. They were poor people, but they were very rich in values, one. Second, I had some extraordinary teachers, high school teachers, engineering college teachers. Then my bosses at IIM Ahmedabad, my boss in Paris. Every one of these people gave me an opportunity to learn some extraordinary lessons. For example, I learned from my high school headmaster, Sri K.V. Narayan, the importance of treating public property with a greater care than one would treat one's personal property. That's an extraordinary lesson that he taught me. Second, I learned from my engineering college professor how a teacher must strive for excellence, even in an environment where excellence is not the rigor, is not all-pervasive. I learned from my boss at IIM Ahmedabad the importance of starting every transaction on a zero base and not carrying the hysteresis of bias of prior transactions to the current transaction. The importance of using data and facts in judging every transaction, and how that will help you perform better as a member of your team. My boss in Paris taught me what it means to take full bottom line responsibility for the mistakes of your assistants. Unfortunately, I don't have time to tell all these stories in detail, but I mean, that was an extreme, an extraordinary, enduring set of lessons that I learned from all these people. And of course, this was all built on the base of, on the foundation of honesty, discipline, hard work, high aspiration, and courtesy and decency in behaving like a good citizen of the country rather than just a good professional. So these were all very good.
We have 5 minutes left, I think. Let me get to the last question of the night. The way I look at Bangalore, I love, and the city has given me so much, to thousands of young entrepreneurs such as myself, young people moving into Bangalore from different cities even. You are a big aspiration to almost every single one of them, all of them. I believe at the core of any city are the people, not the roads, not the infra, not the problems that one typically talks about. Bangalore has created that unique nuance, culture, a combination of people that in culmination make the city what it is. If you were to chart out Bangalore's trajectory over the next 5 years or the next 10 years, what do you think Bangalore is doing right? What do you think Bangalore is doing wrong? And how does it thrive over the next decade?
Well, Bangalore, I believe, contributes about 35 to 37% of the total software exports from India. So what that means is you are looking at about $75 billion US from just Bangalore. Because if you looked at $200 billion as the total export from India, 75 would be the thing. Now, I'm not even getting into other areas, expertise like you have in other areas. But what is it that we can do to make Bangalore even more attractive? Are the following. One, I found during my 30 years as the CEO and the executive chairman that the maximum percentage of local people that you can employ in an industry like software services is about 60%. At Karnataka, at that time, it was about 50%. Maybe a few other states, it might have been 60. So what does it mean? It means that the rest 50% of the talent will inevitably come from other states in India, maybe a small percentage from the developed countries, etc. So, the first task of a good public governance system for Bangalore to become even stronger is we have to provide a total freedom to start English medium schools, whether we like it or not. Because I have met a lot of very important people in different areas. They all have sent their children to English medium school. I haven't come across anybody who is very important, who is either in any area, who sent his children to Kannada medium school. I am a Kannadiga. I speak Kannada. I enjoy reading, S.L. Bhairappa, Shivaram Karant, my own wife. Many. That is not the issue. But the reality is, you asked a question: what is it that we need to do so that Bangalore becomes even more successful? Second, I think we have to improve our infrastructure with a sense of alacrity. Let me give you one example. It may not be very palatable to say it here, but I will say it. In 2004, the Chinese government came to know that we were looking for starting a development center in China. So the mayor of Shanghai invited me to his place. Of course, very sophisticated fellow, excellent. It's almost like a palace, his official thing, to his house for breakfast. And he asked me, what do you want? I said, look, I want a land right in the center of Pudong. I want about 25 acres. And he said, of course, they do their work before meeting. He said, we have identified three pieces of land. You kindly go and see. And by tomorrow evening, 5 p.m., we will give you the letter of allotment and possession. And that happened. Now, the reality is that, yes, China may not be our friend today. I accept all of that. That is for our political leaders who will handle China the way it should be handled. All of that. I am nobody there. I have no locus standi to comment on the geopolitical issues. I am only talking about it from the dimension of taking quick decisions. So, I think we have, for example, completing the electronic city metro, completing the metro to other parts where there are a lot of companies. All these have to be taken up on a priority. The people in that infrastructure industry must work 3 shifts. They should not work just one shift, come at 11 a.m., 10 fellows sitting there, and then go at 5 p.m. At least on the Electronic City Road, that's what I see. I may be completely wrong. But elsewhere in the nations that have high aspiration, people work. I have seen 2 shifts, definitely 2 shifts, because I would return around midnight and I have seen people working, as if they are going to disappear tomorrow morning. So while I cannot vouch for 3 shifts there, but definitely I can vouch for 2 shifts. Now, we want to be better than all those countries. Why don't we say our people will work 3 shifts? Ask them what are the requirements for them to complete that thing by their workers working 3 shifts. Provide them that. So I think there is a little bit of these things that can be done by our leaders. And if we did that, then I have no doubt why India cannot grow even faster than China. Not just the growth alone, because our base is only about 3.5, whereas China's is 19 trillion. But we will catch up with China, and hopefully one day we can overtake. But that requires taking quick decisions, making sure that all hurdles for entrepreneurs like you and others, today I am not an entrepreneur, removed as if there is no tomorrow. And then I think we too can experience that.
I think with that, we end the session. Thank you so much, Murthy sir. It's always an honor speaking with you.